Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Matt, Sales Manager for TechOn, and we're at Startup Today podcast episode 3 featuring Carl Maiorana. Basically looking this time at no-code tools, AI, and digital innovation. So Carl, I've known for a couple of years. I met him when I first moved to Perth, and we've been fortunate enough to get him to join us today. So Carl, thanks for joining. Do you want to do a quick intro so people know exactly who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Matt. So my name's Carl. I think I met Matt through a morning startup in Perth and just the startup scene in general. So I've been bouncing around that the last 5 years. I'll take you back even further. Most of my career has been in property and financial services, and I had a financial service business that I sold that I ran from 2012 to 2020 and sold it because I wanted to build a prop tech app. So that was my first step into the startup app building world. And I worked with a software engineer on that first app, but I lost him halfway through. So I kind of discovered that no-code tools are a solution to building apps if you can learn how to stitch them together. And that was a fascinating discovery for me. Really exciting to know that somebody who can't code or didn't know software engineering now had the tools available to them to build things. So I've been hooked ever since that I made that discovery, and been essentially building apps for myself, trying to find the one app that I can build once and sell 1,000 times. But mostly been making a living building custom apps in-house for different industries. So things like real estate, pharmacy, wine, building, education, all kinds of different industries. But the pattern with app development is, there are similarities across all industries, especially there's some big advantages of being able to move fast with no code and even faster now with AI. So it's a really exciting time.
Yep, awesome. Sorry, looks like the live stream is created its own link now, so I'm just gonna put everyone over to. So do you want to talk a little bit more about maybe No Code Odyssey first and then 5Y?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think I met you when No Code Odyssey was in like a discovery phase or launching in infancy. So No Code Odyssey was a collaboration with a good friend of mine, Elizabeth Knight, who a lot of people know in the Perth startup scene. Really smart, ambitious young lady. Um, and we both kind of discovered these no-code tools around the same time. And I met her somewhere through the UWA ecosystem, and she couldn't code as well, but she was equally fascinated about the opportunities that are possible by knowing how to put these tools together. So just by after tinkering with different tools and talking to each other about what tools she was learning and what tools I was learning, um, we both uncovered we had a really strong passion for education. She had been working in the education system, and her main hustle was purposeful, which is really education based and doing great work with schools. And both my parents are teachers, so I've always had like education in the blood. Always valued education. I think is the best gift you can give somebody. The gift of
yeah.
a new skill. So we just it just happened naturally. We learned about these tools. We love these tools. We just wanted to share the knowledge.
Mm,
Um, so what we did was we had a couple cohorts, and what was great about those cohorts, I built our own lending management system with no code tools. So instead of just pulling one off the shelf, we built our own, and then essentially we ran it all online. And we taught people from scratch how to build their own websites or basic web apps with no code tools, and it was really satisfying just to see people's journeys through that. So the one that I remember most was a lady in her 60s, and she was a psychologist. And the first meeting, we could barely get her on a Zoom call. In
mm.
fact, by the end of the course, she had launched her own website that had an electronic store on it that could
Wow.
book her counselling appointments, that could do all sorts of application stuff. And we built that with her, but she's running it on her own now. So it's just a great story of what's possible if you
Yeah.
keep an open mind and have some curiosity.
Awesome. And 5Y is that something you've been working on, I suppose, for a couple of years as well?
Yeah,
Or
5Y is just my consulting business,
okay.
So I guess No Code Odyssey had a very specific objective of teaching people how to use no code tools. 5Y, the objective is just to help people install tech, not necessarily build apps for them. Often it's just the time. Often it's just there's so many great tools out there. Often it's about knowing which tool to use and how to implement it.
Mhm.
So 5Y was a lot about that, but sometimes a tool would only get you so far, and you'd have to kind of build the rest yourself. And that's probably where I started using tech on. So no code tools would only
Right.
get you so far,
Yep.
or maybe they get you 80% of the way, and then I'd have to go get a proper software engineer to do that last 20%. You know,
Sure.
um, and so I'm not saying no code or even AI is going to replace software engineers because they just think differently. They've got 4 or 5 years of education on knowing how to think about building products, and every tool has its limitation. So I think
Hmm.
the skill of a no coder is I probably use about 20, maybe 30 different tools that I know reasonably well, about 7 or 8 that I know in great depth. And within that suite of 30 tools, build a lot of things, but there's always a limitation. So knowing what the limitation is a skill of the no coder, and knowing how to fill that limitation by collaborating with proper engineers is an important part.
Yep. Cool. And I think we'll explore a little bit of that a little bit later, especially like talking about use cases and where to bridge that gap. But maybe just for the audience's sake, what's one thing, a lesser known fact perhaps people don't know about you that you're comfortable sharing?
Um, I'll share some creative things because what attracts me to the no code or app development movement, AI movement, is just the ability to mix creative thinking with logical thinking. So I've just always been wired that way. So I've always had side hustles in creativity. So as a younger age, my teenage years, early 20s, I played in a lot of bands. Um, some of them got reasonably, I wouldn't say famous, but got some airtime on Triple J.
Mm.
So that's, I guess, something that people don't know about me. And in the same theme, when I sold my business in 2020, a bucket list item of mine was to make a feature film.
Okay.
So I teamed up with a friend of mine who was a drama teacher,
Yep.
and it was just the right timing in both our lives. He was sick of doing stage plays, when you're restricted to just what you have on stage.
Hmm.
And he said, do you want to help me make a feature film?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? Piece of cake." And I only intended to write the script. And anyway, we wrote the script. It was really cool script, and we kind of designed the script to be like all set in the hills in Swan View,
Hmm.
around where Steve lived. Anyway, we did that, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But 3 years later, it turned into a feature film, and we won at Toronto Independent and London Independent.
Wow.
Um, so that was really cool. Um, yeah, so I kind of, I know that's not exact parallel, but at building shares some parallels with creativity, and whether it be movies or music or writing, because you got to start with an idea and have that creative intuition, but also have that logical ability just to practically put everything together.
Yep. Yep. I think maybe for the viewers today, like I've got the wide view because I could see you on the software, but because it's got your guitars in the background, but
Yeah,
maybe people
can
can't
I do a
see
quick
on the
scan across?
YouTube. Yeah, sure. Why
Look,
not?
there's my rig, a little bit of everything. There's a ukulele and a mandolin sitting in the back. So one of everything. I think I got 7 all up. The one that's missing is a banjo. So um, that will probably be on the next acquisition will be a banjo.
Okay, that's cool. So if you got any musical talent or any interesting creativity, that's probably something else you can connect with Carl on to, potentially. Um, all right, let's get into it. So I think we'll talk a little bit about your background in working in the SaaS field. And maybe do you want to kind of talk about what you've seen over the past 5 to 10 years of like
Yeah,
working in that
I think my
sector?
viewpoint is really restricted to 5, maybe 10 years, well, especially
Sure.
the last 5 years where I've really been in and amongst it. And you'd probably have even greater insights to me. But just whenever you're kind of in something, or whenever I'm in something, I kind of try and have pay some respect to the history on how we got to now, and just really trying to understand all the work that's gone in to get to the stage where somebody like me who can't code can make apps, and just have an
Mm.
appreciation for that. So I just tried to do some research and think about the evolution of SaaS, and I kind of think when did SaaS even become SaaS? Do you have a view on that? I mean,
N-
what,
Nah, I don't. I remember the subscription like payment model maybe
yeah,
10, 15 years ago.
yeah,
And I think people have, everyone loves to build an acronym out of stuff these days, and
yeah.
I think they've just found an easier way to talk about.
Well, I think you're right. Probably 10, 15 years ago. But what happened then? I think probably because in the early days of software, you've been around long enough like me to know that you used to buy software in a box, right? So it was a
Mm,
one-off purchase. But then I guess as internet and browser-based applications or software become more prominent, you can launch the software through download the software through the browser, but you're still downloading it as a one-off purchase. So
yeah,
somewhere along the line, someone's changed it. It's like, hey, instead of one-off purchase, let's make it ongoing and just updating the features. So somewhere around there, 10, 15 years ago, SaaS became SaaS.
that's
Um,
right. And I think like the subscription model, it's like you see it everywhere now. You see it in gaming, you see it
mm.
in like Netflix and like movies on dramas on demand. So it just made sense to software to
Yeah,
go the
I think
same
that was one of
route.
the
So,
attractions for me when I sold my business, which is very much, the finance business, very much a consulting business, and you kind of have
mhm.
your glass ceiling. But the whole idea of SaaS just was so appealing. I think you can get really really high margins on it, even up to 90% or more. If sometimes you get it right, and
Yep.
yeah, that appeal of well, I won't say infinite, but like exponential scale, because build once, sell 1,000 times. It's just like it's just really enticing as a business model.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess so. I just had some appreciation of all the work that went to just the name of SaaS. But then even SaaS has evolved. Like it's evolved as it just started on the cloud, I guess. But then over time, as tech got better, it became more collaborative.
Mm.
And instead of just running the SaaS through the software through the browser, it become like, or you can actually work on it with other people through the browser or through your phone. And the whole mobile technology revolution kind of was the next wave of allowing things to happen. But then I think then the next shift was the part where I kind of jumped on board the no code shift.
Mm.
It became, instead of just being able to collaborate with people on the browser, it become, well, you can use these tools like Lego blocks to build your own stuff. And that's the part where I kind of really engaged and started getting excited and kind of rode that wave. So that was kind of like the no code slash API wave. Probably
Yep.
that was probably the last 5, 7 years, and now I guess the last from 2 years onwards, or even depending on when you count it, we're kind of moving into a new wave, and some people are calling that new wave like vibe coding or
Mm.
AI agentic coding, or um, which is really exciting. Because you can just do so much more, so much faster. So yeah, that's where we are now, and yeah, I think what can we say about vibe coding? Um, I think, do you know Rick Rubin, the music producer?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
he's
know.
uh, he's a
Yep.
really crazy, interesting guy. That I think he said something fascinating about vibe coding. But for context to people listening, Rick Rubin is a non-musical person, can't play an instrument, can't read music, but he's ended up um, producing music for Metallica, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Kanye West, Johnny Cash. Really, that's not somebody who just knows the genre. That's somebody who's got some extra special intuition, right?
Yep.
And it's fascinating when I saw him talking about vibe coding. I was like, what would this guy know about vibe coding? He's a music guy. But he said something really fascinating. He said vibe coding is the punk rock of software creation. You know,
Right.
and that totally, for me, someone from a music background, that totally makes sense, right? Even how I got into music, I learned three chords like the punk rock, just a bar chord. And once you know that
Yeah.
bar chord or 3 chords, you could probably play 1,000 songs, right? And just mix
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
the combinations of those chords. So that totally makes sense to me. It's not about the chords or the tools that you use. It's about the vibe or the intuition or the feeling or the objective that you're going for to create what you want.
Yeah.
So that totally makes sense to me. And like I think that vibe code movement is like a really good name because yeah, you don't have to know the code. You just have to know how to tell AI what you want. And
Yeah.
um, but there's a skill in that as well.
Yeah, I can relate. When I was learning piano, like C, F, G are the kind of key fundamental chords that you learn. Like I learned it on guitar, but I sucked at guitar. Sorry, like I learned it on piano too, and then you
Yeah,
can kind of use that as a foundation for building, more songs, basically.
yeah,
And I think it's the same. You have a foundation, whether you're a software developer or you're using no code or you're using any other tool. You got that foundation knowledge. You kind of understand how to put it together. You've got the goal in mind, and then you just kind of learn how to put the pieces together as well.
yeah.
So
So yeah, just a really. I just thought no one's defined, and it's funny, isn't it? Somebody outside of the tech industry, it takes those external eyes to really sum up something really well. Sometimes.
yeah,
Um, I don't know who's credited. I don't think he's credited with creating the name vibe coding, but I think he's the one who just really captured the essence the best.
yeah. Well, I guess it just goes to show how far-reaching that kind of movement is
Yeah.
as well. So, what does the current product builder look like these days, you reckon? Like, if you're talking about vibe coding, and I think you've even put vibe marketing
Mm.
in there as well, what kind of image does that conjure up for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I never even liked the phrase no code before because even though you're not writing code, you're still, you know, uh, it's probably more like drag and drop development, right? So
Mm,
I think we moved from drag and drop development to prompt development.
hmm.
But you still have to know about the different pieces, and you still have to know about user experience, and you still have to know about how data design works. So um, the more you know those basics, the better you're going to be able to go. But even if you don't know those basics, I guess what's great about the current movement is you can just jump on some AI tools and start having a go and come up with something. You probably have flaws. It'll probably be unelegant. It'll probably take you longer than it needs to, but you'll get something. And all that is way better than having to put 4 or 5 years into mastering a syntax or programming language, right? So that's you have some appreciation of how much work's gone to that point. So
Mm,
to answer your question, what kind of tools? The vibe coding stack tools. Well, I'd even say before we get to vibe coding stack tools, I want to talk about a couple of my favorite no code tools because
mm.
they're still very important part of app development. And
Yeah.
even then, you can build a lot of stuff without kind of vibe coding. So generally, you need like a good database tool. So the best database tools that I use for no coding are Airtable. Um, and Airtable, for anyone who hasn't used it, is just amazing. It's kind of like a spreadsheet slash app, and it's just got amazing user experience. So things
Mm,
that maybe take you an hour in Google Sheets or Excel can take you like a minute in Airtable.
right.
And it's connected to a whole ecosystem of plugins where you can launch SMS or do kind of graph visualizations or all kinds of stuff. Very easy to learn, very powerful. And a database tool, whatever app you have, will have a database tool, whether you see it or not. So I think it's important for anyone starting in this world to start with the data. I always think it's better to start with the data, understand what's important data that you need to collect to make your website or your app run, and
Hmm.
then kind of build the user interface on top of that. So
Mm,
Airtable is probably the entry level database tool. Then there's probably something a bit of a step up on that called Superbase. Um, Superbase is closer to more like a traditional database, like a SQL database, but somewhere in between no code database and a full coding database. So they're the database tools, and then so you got to know like a data collection tool, like a form tool. So
mm.
my favorite is Jotform. I think Jotform is the best. You can build apps from Jotform, just like learn one tool, data collection. You could build like a store that sells things in Jotform in like an hour or two if you know how to use
Right.
it. Connect it up to Stripe, collect payments, all kinds of stuff. So it's good for data collection, but also you can actually wrangle the data. But even now, Jotform is brilliant. You can make your own AI chatbots off Jotform to a really
Right.
powerful level. Like a
Yep.
year or two ago, I was trying to make I'm not trying to, I was making AI chatbots, but it was quite hard at that stage, especially for the no code tools weren't as strong as what they are now, and
Hmm.
they were just a bit buggy, never quite worked, never could be reliable. Even though, like, I'd put sometimes weeks or months into trying to perfect them. But now with Jotform, you can build it in a day, build it in a couple hours and then just talk to it for a day to train it, you know?
Yep.
So that's pretty amazing. Um, then I guess there's a whole bunch of tools, but you kind of got to start to know some user interface tools, some design tools. So traditionally, people use things like Figma, where you can design the interfaces for your apps, and you can even make the interfaces clickable, so it feels like you're actually clicking through and using the product. But I think Figma is great, but I think Figma now is its place is. Uh-oh, the dog's going to start barking in the background.
That's all right.
Um, I think what was I saying? I think Figma. I used to love Figma, and I still do, but I think Figma now is kind of owning the space for designers. I don't think it's a great no code or vibe code tool because there's still a bit of a learning curve.
Yep.
I think I discovered this tool called UI Wizard. Have you seen UI Wizard?
No.
Oh,
Tell
it's
me.
probably the
Tell me
best.
more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. When you discover one of these tools, you just want to go and tell all your like
Yeah.
software friends about it.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, that's probably one of the best tools I've discovered recently because it's basically prompt to UI, you know?
Mm.
And whereas Figma had to drag and drop. It's still no code, but you drag and drop every development. Whereas UI Wizard, you prompt it and it gets pretty accurate. But then what's even better is even if it doesn't um, give you exactly what you want, you can go in and change the elements individually.
Right.
And I think that's the brilliant part because a lot of these other vibe coding tools, you can't actually change individual elements, which I'll talk about in a moment. You've got to reprompt it. And even if you've done prompts with ChatGPT on image creation, right? And it doesn't get the image right. And you say, keep everything else the same, but change the color to blue. It doesn't do that. It will change something
Nah.
else,
That's
I
right.
don't know if you've noticed that.
No, I've seen. I've seen.
You know what I'm talking about there, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I love the UI Wizard because you can prompt it, get really close, and then change things individually without having to prompt it again and then going rogue and changing everything.
Okay.
So I think that's a brilliant breakthrough, and I think it's a kind of thing that I wouldn't say make Figma redundant because Figma can just go into the minute detail full control, but it's pretty powerful. So we've talked about databases, we've talked about data collection and AI agents, I guess, with Jotform. We talked about user interface with Figma and UI Wizard. There's a whole bunch of other peripheral tools for very specific use cases. I'll talk about a couple, like probably you need to know like an automation platform. So an automation platform is great for linking tools and running automations. And for those who don't know, like an automation is pretty much an if-then function. You have a trigger. If this happens on this date, trigger an SMS to go out or an email to go out. So automation platforms are a really necessary part about building. And the easiest one to learn is Zapier. I don't like it; it's expensive, and I think there's way better out there. There's one called Make, which I think is a fraction of the cost and just so much better. But it does take a bit more time to learn. You don't have to learn it though. There's people like TechOn, Dev Studios, and you can always find somebody who knows how to do it. You just have to know how to give the instruction on what you want. But the last one on top of that, so we've gone Zapier, Make, and then there's one called N8N, which is I guess it's a automation tool designed for AI. So it's got a lot of AI native APIs. So it'll talk to all their AI engines really easily. I can't quite give you a more engineering technical version of why it's better. It just is.
Sure.
So I guess those are the three you need to know. All right, so that's everything you need to know before you get into vibe coding. If you don't, that's fine. You can still get into vibe coding. But even if you know one or two of those tools and then you get into vibe coding, your experience is just going to be so much better. So once you get into vibe coding, probably the entry level one is something called Lovable, which is pretty much that. These vibe coding is prompt to website or prompt to app, right? So Lovable is prompt to application template. You know, it has limitations on what templates it can build. You know, so it's very good. Like if you just wanted to build like a directory or a marketplace, and it's something with a known playbook or template, it's great for that. As soon as, you know, like I want to build Tinder for pet lovers, you know, great, use Lovable. As soon as you kind of can't do, I want to do this for this, then probably Lovable's hit its limit, you know. So then I look at something called Bolt. Bolt is probably my favorite at the moment. It's the fastest, and the UI designs are very good. And you can do, what have I built on Bolt that I can talk about? Even
That's
things
an
called,
American, is it an
I
American
think
no
it is an
code
American one,
platform?
Bolt.new.
Yeah.
But a lot of like widgets, a lot of things, a lot of like embedded frames for websites. Like I was kind of just making some marketing tools or growth game tools for a client, and we did like a chocolate wheel spinner, you know, and they wanted to have very specific things on the chocolate wheels or probabilities, or you this happens and then that happens. So that's the kind of thing you can do. Actually, sorry, I got it wrong. That's Replit. I built that on Replit.
Okay.
So I've got ahead myself. So on Bolt, what do we build on Bolt? Doing some voice AI things on Bolt, you know.
Okay.
You know, so AI agents that can do voice, you know, so reminder calls. Hey, reminder, this is happening tomorrow. So it triggers out a reminder call instead of a text message. It's a voice agent. So it can do stuff like that, which is really cool. Replit is the next step up. So where Bolt reaches its limit is on some of those dynamic visualization things. You know, it's very good at data in, data out, define your playbook outside of the template. Where it stops is probably, you know, those dynamic visualization things. So that's when I go to something called Replit. And that's when I built like the spinning chocolate wheel and controlled all the conditions and things like that, you know?
Okay. Wow.
So Replit's great. And I guess that's probably my vibe suite, those three, Lovable, Bolt, Replit. For people that have a little bit of coding nous or engineering nous, you can go the next step up to Cursor. I don't know if you've heard of Cursor.
Yeah, that's the AI like coding assistant almost.
Yeah, it's a coding assistant, right? So it's not quite prompt to app, but it's a coding assistant. So you get an engineer who can give very specific prompt instructions about what they want. Then the AI engine or Cursor will actually write the code, you know, and it'll write it almost flawlessly. You know, it won't put an extra comma or, you know, miss a comma or anything like that, and you spend hours trying to debug it. So, and then on top of that, the one that I've heard is the best and fastest is called Windsurf.
Okay.
You know, so that's the one.
That's a new one.
Yeah, I would love to sit with a developer and just watch them use it, you know, to understand its power. So I can't talk personally about personal experience from those, but that's kind of where those ones are at. But, you know, in my world and people I talk to, it's mainly Lovable, Bolt, and Replit, you know.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about use case and limitations? So when do you think Lovable, you've talked about it already, I guess, but maybe talk more broadly about some of the better use cases for Lovable, Bolt, and what was the other one? And
Replit.
Replit, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so Lovable, I guess, if you're trying to do something that already exists but trying to do it your way, Lovable's great, right? I want to build, I don't know, like I said, I want to build a closed community version of Twitter for kids' soccer teams or something, you know? and away you go. You know, there's a playbook. You're just changing the variables and the components. So I think it's really good for that. Bolt, again, Bolt is if you're going a little bit beyond that and you can't give an exact example of what you want, you might say it's like a social media app, but it's also a marketplace and I don't know, directory all at once, but it's for campers, traveling on the road, um, and then you kind of have to spend time telling it the variables. So I guess when the variables are unknown a little bit and there's no obvious playbook it can copy,
Yep.
Bolt is very good.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the limitation is the design. So anything where the dynamic design is happening, like any game kind of thing. Well, I wouldn't say any because then there'll be limitations of what you can do. But
Yep.
yeah, like Replit is very good for games. Dynamic visualization, stuff like that. So I guess that's the best way, at least in my experience, that I can kind of talk about the limitations. And I guess it's because it's so new. You need a couple of years really to kind of know what you can and can't do, and that's the exciting thing as well. I mean, those are limitations I've experienced, but you know, if you think of AI as a tool, like a hammer, just because I'm using that hammer and I can't, make a roof frame with that hammer, doesn't mean that somebody else who's more skilled can
Yes.
can
Yes.
get around the limitations with some creative thinking.
Mm.
That's just what I've experienced. But I think I'm a good test case because I know enough, but I'm not an engineer, so I kind of like somewhere in the middle of the curve, you know. Um, so if I can do it, I think almost anyone can do it with a bit of just a little bit of practice.
Yep.
Um, whereas if somebody who's an engineer can do it, well, you're probably got to put a couple of years proper training to be able to get that far, which I think most people aren't going to invest that, if it's a side hustle or just something they want to play around with on the side.
Mm.
Mm.
I think like something we've seen at TechCon is that people who already have a software engineering background or have done it for a couple of years can jump on these no-code tools quite quickly as well, just because they've got that kind
Mm.
of way of thinking or way, they understand how the tools have been built, and they can kind of get their head around it. I would say a lot quicker than probably someone like myself. So, and maybe the other thing we're kind of seeing, so I see Figma has added like an AI prompt to it,
Okay.
but I think it's more just for helping you kind of help to visualize an idea, really rough, really probably low fidelity kind of UI wireframes. Um, and another thing I do, because Lovable's got such a low barrier to entry, I think anyone can just jump in and, put a prompt in and create something from it. And all of a sudden, you've just visualized an idea that you have. So I think that's like really good in helping even people with zero knowledge or experience start to kind of visualize or create a visual representation of their idea.
Mm.
Um, and that's something they can then show to a dev or a UI UX designer, to have probably a better
Yeah.
conversation too.
I think you make a really great point. The best thing about this whole movement is that anyone with an idea has no excuse anymore. You can start. You don't have to. You don't have to go. Oh, I don't know how to code, or I can't do this or that. Yes, just jump in and start somewhere. Yes,
Yeah.
it might not be perfect. Yes, it might only be 10% of where you want to go, but that starting is the hardest thing, right?
Mm.
In most things in life. Um, so I think you make an excellent point. Just anyone can just jump on Lovable. Even now, don't even need Lovable UI Wizard, and you can probably do way better
Yep.
UIs. And
Right.
that's how most I guess people new to this movement or most amateurs start. They start visually,
Hmm.
and I started like that on my no code movement. But I really kind of encourage people to spend a bit of time to understand the data, because if you can understand the data a little bit, it'll make how you construct the visualization, the user interface so much better. But
Yep.
also, I get it, just start somewhere, right? If
Yep.
you start with the UI, build the UI, but then play with it, and then soon you'll work out where it breaks, and that's when you start to learn the importance of data.
Mm. Well, yeah, it's just, made the accessibility so much better now. So,
Mm.
that's a great part of those some of those tools. Um, I know you've done a little bit with Bubble, but you didn't mention it. I was just
Oh
curious what you
yeah,
think about it these days.
I love Bubble. So Bubble was like, well, this Bubble I used to put up on a pedestal as the best no-code tool.
Right.
I don't anymore, but it's still amazing.
Hmm.
Because Bubble is kind of like the Figma of no-code, right? You can do anything with it, but you got to put a bit of time into learning it. And
Yeah.
I guess just the way my experience evolved was I put my time into learning lots of different tools, specific tools, and learning how to put them together. Whereas Bubble is the one tool that you can do it all in one place.
Mm.
Um, and um, and I could never do it as good as other people. So I used to work with other people on Bubble. But even through TechOn, I've worked with people who use Bubble and software engineers who choose to use a no coding tool because they can build things
Right.
so much faster and better with Bubble. So I'm a big fan of Bubble in the right hands. Unfortunately, not my hands.
Okay. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that use case, so like the latest use case. Was it
With Tripper,
Tripper? Yeah.
yeah. So Tripper's an app I built with some friends of mine, and we use Bubble to build that. I spent a bit of time trying to find a combination of tools we could build without going to Bubble, but it just couldn't, right? Because there was just too many things that it couldn't do. So we built it with Bubble, and when I say we built it with Bubble, first we designed it with Figma,
Hmm.
and then we gave those Figma user interface designs to an engineer through TechOn, and then he took those designs and made it come alive. So I think if that was building it from scratch with a proper, JavaScript or code, it would have taken 6 months.
Right.
Um, but in this case, it took about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience. The limitation of Bubble used to be that it could only do web browser apps or progressive web apps. So for those people who don't know, it's just apps that exist on a web browser. But now it's been able to. A new condition is that you can actually turn those apps into Apple or Google Play store apps, which is a
Mhm.
great development. Um, and I think the challenge with some of those tools is because they were kind of built in the last paradigm with no code modular, um, design. Are they going to be able to pivot to include prompts? Like I didn't even know Figma had got prompts now, so they've been able, which is great. I think that's great
Yeah.
because I think without that they would have been left behind.
Mm.
Um, but they've been managed to do it. I've not seen how good it is. But I think if Bubble could add prompts, it'll leapfrog, Lovable, Replit, Bolt.
Right.
Because what's missing from all of those tools is the ability to go in there and change each element. You have to keep
Right. Right.
prompting, which is
Yeah.
actually a very big limitation. I'm sure they'll solve it eventually, but they've leapfrogged Bubble. If Bubble can sort out that prompt to UI,
Hmm.
then Bubble leapfrogs them, which I think is
Yeah.
a
Right.
fascinating thing about, and that's the advantage of competitive marketplace. It forces innovation, right?
Mm.
And you don't know who the winners and losers are going to be. So I think I would love to see Bubble because Bubble was like the OG of no code. It
Yeah.
deserved to
Right.
be the top.
Yeah.
It was just ahead of its time, so it designed its whole product around no code and drag and drop as opposed to prompt. But if you can combine both, yeah, that will be
Yeah.
brilliant.
Okay. Maybe I'll just open up to the audience. If you've got any questions, now's probably a good time to start typing them into the chat. We can get to them shortly. So I guess maybe I want to talk a little bit more about AI and in early stage, particularly development or startups. What are some interesting use cases you've either worked on yourself or you've seen yourself?
Okay,
Especially
and
with
it's a
some of
really
these
interesting
tools.
question. And I think the
Yeah.
interesting thing about this is it's still so early. You
Mm.
know, there's not a great sample space of how it's been used yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the tech has gone so far ahead that human adoption is just scratching the surface on how to use it. You know, it takes
Mm.
us time to learn these new tools. Then it takes us time to come up with ideas on how to use those tools for what use cases, and there's just not enough of them yet.
Mm.
So that's the first thing I'd say is that even though when we talk about AI adoption, everyone say, "Oh, it's so fast." Well, it's like, well, no. I mean, I think the technology progression is so fast, but the adoption is lagging. You know,
Yep.
so I don't think the movement is going to be as fast as some people predict, just because
Mm-hmm.
um, the pace of what humans can do always lags. It's still going to
Yep.
be amazingly fast, but some of the predictions I've seen, I'm not seeing it, at least now. And I know everything like new technology is exponential, right? You hit critical mass and then away you go. At
Yep.
least for now, there's a big lag. So to answer your question, there's still a lot of use cases, but I reckon no one's really cracked it yet. And no one's like saying
Mm.
this is the game changer or this is how you're gonna 3x or 5x your business with AI. Um, these so-called AI experts or consultants, you know, I don't know how anyone can be an AI expert that hasn't been an engineer for 5 years, you know, that's been a business consultant calling himself AI expert, and they
Yep.
go around teaching prompts. Like that's the big game
Mm.
changer. I mean, it's just one thing you got to know, but no, it's not the big game changer.
Mm.
Um, so I think, so what do I think? Um, yeah, so what is the game? I don't know yet what the game changer is, but I think the game changer is going to be more about user experience and less about technology.
Yep.
You know, so I think it's going to be just doing existing stuff with better user experience, and using AI to make that experience better. Instead
Yep.
of 4 clicks to do something, one prompt to do it. You know,
Right. Right.
and that sounds overly simplistic, but and you probably know just as much as me, doing things simple in tech and software, so much work goes into it. So much work goes into making 3 clicks two or 2 clicks one. You know, simplicity is hard, but it's powerful. And to make things
Mm.
simple, it's about eliminating as much friction and as much stuff that doesn't need to be there or that could be done in less time and effort. And that's why engineering is really, when you think about engineering, it's like achieving your output with as minimal resources as possible, right? And so much work in engineering goes to either achieving more output with the same inputs or
Right.
achieving less, um, the same output with less inputs. So I
Yep.
think that's where the game changer is going to be. And I know that's very technical talk, so let's kind of make it more about real world cases. Um, User experience. I think,
Or maybe you can think about it from a non-technical founder's point of view, because I
yeah,
guess like I see that a lot. You know, they struggle to find a tech co-founder. They probably don't have a budget for it either. You know, how can this kind of help them, you know, get a head start
yeah.
even?
Um, so okay, I'll give you one use case that's very near to me that I used a lot in the
Hmm.
last years, and even my first prop tech app that was very much SMS based marketing, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of like the old paradigm, you know. Um, have this app interface, something happens, generate an SMS to people, you know, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Instead of an SMS, it could just become, which is very static, right? It's almost like the Morse code, you know, just send this over there, you know?
Right.
There's no dialogue. You can sometimes program it for a little bit of reply yes or no or reply this, right? But imagine if you unlock SMS and you put an AI voice agent instead of SMS.
I see.
You see how much possibility that can unlock?
Yep.
You know, then that's user experience, you know, and you know what the great thing is? It's almost the same infrastructure in tech, you know, but instead of
Mm.
an SMS infrastructure going out, you've got an AI agent going out.
Hmm.
Um, so the application from that, there's so many applications for that. And the scary thing about that is that's when you start talking about um, job displacement because um, that could displace whole call centers,
Yes. Yeah.
and it'll be doing the cost of the role of call centers at 10, 20, 30%, and it will be doing it without sick leave or getting angry at a customer or making a mistake. It'll be engineered for perfection.
Yep.
And you could apply that idea of an AI agent to almost anything, So that, I guess, the breakthrough I had recently when thinking about AI, I used to think of it as a tool. I used to give that hammer analogy, right? I was like,
Yep.
because this was, I used to think of no-code tools, and no-code tools are tools like hammers, and in the hands of someone skilled, they can do all kinds of stuff with it. They can build a surfboard, a guitar, a roofing, frame. But an AI, I used to think AI was the same. It's just the best tool you've ever had. But no, it's not, because the tool can only do, it can only be used with you. Whereas AI agent, I don't think of as a tool anymore. I think of it as an assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think of it as the smartest assistant that's ever lived,
Right.
But you still have to put the time into training it to understand your needs
Yep.
and what you want to do.
Mm.
And training it doesn't just mean prompt. That's why I hate these people who just go prompt engineer. That's the that's what it's all about. No, you have to spend time, and I know this from having trained AI agents. Right, you can build an AI agent, chatbot in an hour or two, but the
Mm-hmm.
value comes talking to it for the 10 hours after. When you said this, you should have said this. Actually, when you said this, you can add this, this, and this next time. When someone says this, they could also mean this. It's kind of, that assistant is still very smart, but you still have to just train it, nudge it. They don't have the experiences you have.
Yep.
So I think, what's my point with all that? I think that most of the breakthroughs will come from, being able to train those agents to understand the nuance of the scenario. But it's turning a tool into an assistant. This is, I guess, where it comes down to. An assistant can make decisions, whereas a tool can't.
Yep.
A tool will always, it can do the work for you, but it can't make the decisions for you.
Mm.
Whereas an AI agent, it can make decisions for you. Once you've trained it and you're confident you can let it loose, then which is also the scary thought, though, isn't it? Then we start talking about Skynet and self-awareness and things like that.
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
About
It's good stuff.
It's hard because
Yeah.
we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
So anything that's got okay, when you think about use cases, think about your work and think about all the phone calls you make and all the emails you make, and then trying to summarize what each of those activities is about, whether it be phone call or email, and try and group them. And you'll end up with a couple groups. Some of it's sales calls, some of it's customer service calls before the sale, some of it's customer service calls after the sale, some of it's customer service problem solving during the sale process, some of it's research, and then you can start to kind of come up with use cases, right? So those are the use cases. Then the use case for AI is like, how can I build an agent that can do part of this or all of this for me with as little error as possible? And I think that's the world where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one big use case, and that's kind of based on my experience where I see the opportunity. But, then we've not even talked about, image recognition, voice recognition, all kinds of stuff. Just my world, I think that kind of, customer service, sales experience, marketing, those are things that are in every business, so I think there's always use cases for that.
But I think at the end of the day, like, ultimately, if you're curious, you should just go and try. Go have a play.
Exactly.
At the end of the day. So, it's better to try than not. And yeah, I think, like we said, low barrier to entry. Tools like Lovable are really changing the game in that it's really accessible. So
yeah, exactly right. And I think I love how you said just if you're curious, because that's how it all started with me. I kind of see these like as puzzles to solve or toys to play with.
Mhm.
And and really, like, that's where it begins,
Mm.
Ask yourself the question, how could I do this better? Or is this possible? And then just see where your curiosity takes you. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It'll take you further than what you think, because the tools now are so great.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Um, just another prompt for, so if you've got any questions now, it's probably perfect time to ask. But maybe you want to get a sense, Carl, from you about where you think the tools are headed. What's next?
Mhm. I think um, what's next is um, somehow somehow AI will start to learn emotional intelligence.
Mm.
That's a very scary thought.
Right.
Um, but I think that's what's missing. And especially like when I talk about that user experience and stuff,
Mm.
it doesn't know emotion. It guesses patterns, right?
Mm.
But I've even seen some tech now that can record a video call, like a Zoom call, and there's so many great tools that summarize what's talked about, and it guesses the vibe, right? It guesses that,
Yep.
oh, Matt and Carl geeking out on no code tools, they're like enthusiastic, curious guys, you
Right.
know. But then I think the next evolution will be like Matt didn't like it when Carl said this because his facial response was this,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Carl didn't like it when Matt said this because he's, or you know, Carl really liked this response by Matt because his eyes, like, I think that kind of crossover to recognize, so not understanding emotion, but looking for clues,
Mm.
and then using image recognition. Um, so it's kind of like, I think this is really important for customer service and sales because it's not often not about what's being said. It's about what's the underlying message or how it's being said or what's the feeling
Mm.
behind the words. Right now, AI is really good at recognizing the patterns of the words and then guessing, like I said. But if it can start to actually kind of recognize the feeling behind the words or the general vibe of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the next powerful evolution. Um, and and it just means better engineering, right? Because they're still trying for the same output, um, as far as like if it's a sales agent listening to somebody on the phone,
Yep.
um, it'll record the message and summarize it in text. But then if it can kind of notice inflection or micro patterns on voice and the enthusiasm or feeling behind it, or in person, you're just engineering for more, closer towards a perfect outcome than kind of if we think it's this and guessing the rest. Um, so if you kind of think about it like that, it seems harmless. But
Mm.
if you can think about, what's the next, if I think the question was, what's the next wave of AI? I think that
Yeah.
kind of emotional intelligence, because what's AI, right? Artificial intelligence. But that intelligence right now is logical intelligence, pattern
Mm.
recognition. If we ever tip over into emotional intelligence, like it's going to unlock other opportunities, good and bad.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, okay. I mean, I've seen some people, especially like, we're starting to see like this wave of mental health, tech startups, I think it is like anything from, just basic wellness and, you know, taking care of yourself as an employee all the way up to like coaching style voice agents, even. Um, so yeah, no, with the wave of mental health startups that are kind of emerging, I can definitely see AI, breaking into that space. I don't know how it'll work. I don't know how well it works now because I haven't really tried them, but yeah, it's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when everyone was concerned about, Google Doctor
Yeah,
and like people going to Google with their symptoms and Google Doctor misdiagnoses. It's the same kind of
right.
thing, isn't it? But
Mm,
I think it's the same kind of thing ethically, but with more accuracy.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I think what's missing, AI can't do nuance, it can't do emotional intelligence.
mm.
So it needs to stay in its lane for now, and people need to treat it that way.
Yeah.
But sooner or later, it's gonna cross that chasm to emotional
Mm.
intelligence. But I think it's a good. I think like anything, like AI is a powerful. I'd almost say weapon, you know. And if it's used for good, great. If it's used for nefarious or aggressive reasons, obviously not good. And that's what we're all
Yes.
concerned about. But it is a
Yes.
powerful weapon. So when you're talking about mental health or mental fitness as a big problem in society, we need the right ammunition to tackle it and solve it. And
Mm.
AI is a weapon and ammunition to tackle and solve it. But it's dangerous because it's powerful, and if it's used incorrectly, it can do more harm than good. But I want to focus on the good. So the good could be people who don't have access for funding reasons or geographical reasons
Mm.
or confident reasons to go see a therapist. You can still talk to the right tools in AI to get some kind of support.
Mm.
You know, I was doing work for some sales coaching work, and we looked at a lot of the psychology of sales, and that obviously tips into psychology and mental wellness and things like that. And I started doing research on cognitive behavioral theory, right? Human behavior, like, and so much of psychology is based around that. I think it's the most common topic in psychology.
Yeah.
And the elegance and accuracy and speed of which I learned about cognitive behavior theory, but just by chatting to ChatGPT, was mind blowing. And that was without it being designed by a psychologist to know the right order, the right context, the right case studies, the right examples, the right medications, all that stuff that goes with it. And you can only imagine if somebody in the know put all those things together in one place, that would be an amazingly powerful tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the scary thing is that tool displays psychologists? No, but maybe it just becomes a tool for psychologists to
Mm.
use, to use as a subscription, psychology as a service, but you can only use it through a psychologist, and it's regulated, and that way, in between someone's sessions with a psychologist or counselor, they can at least talk about things, and then the psychologist gets that report, and that's the start of the next session.
Yep. Yep.
So like there's all these kind of use cases that could be powerful, but I think what's missing is regulation a lot, because technology has
Mm.
gone so fast ahead and politics is slow and crap that it needs to be better to be able to kind of manage this. Yeah, so
Well, it's interesting you say that because the question that's been asked in the chat is what are the safety concerns in using no-code AI tools? Um,
mm, well, I think
so,
the same answer. I think it's a powerful weapon, and you want to use that weapon for good, not for evil. So
yeah.
I mean, I've given some examples of good. I don't really want to give inception to people to use things for bad reasons, but I can talk about how I've seen some of these tools used
Mm.
for bad, and a lot of it's scams. And this is like, everyone's seen the SMS stuff that knows is scammy, but
Yep.
some of it's getting better and better,
Mm.
and looking more legit, and that's through SMS technology. But I mean, you've heard the use cases of. Have you heard that use case of someone created or duplicated the voice of a CEO,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then
I've
they
seen
used an
people being
AI
able to do
agent
that.
to
Yep.
call the accountant of that firm using the CEO's voice
Right.
and say, "We need to release these funds to pay this bill. It's urgent. Please do it for me."
Wow.
And I actually know how to build something like that.
Mm.
So it's not hard to build something like that to replicate somebody's voice. Somebody could replicate. I don't want to kind of put this idea in someone's head, but I've gone down this path anyway. Somebody could replicate our voices from this podcast.
Yep. Yep.
10, 20 minutes of a sample space of somebody's voice,
Mm.
and the technology exists where you could recreate it, So that's a scary thought. So I think it's like arms keeping up with armor, right? So if somebody sees opportunity for cheating or doing bad with AI, then we're just going to have to rely on good people to come up with defenses for it,
That's right.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, when we talk about the AI tools like Lovable, it produces code, but I think that code is obviously not scalable. It's definitely not safe or secure, I want to say.
Yeah.
Um, But the other thing I've heard too is around agents and people finding ways to get access to agents and some of the flaws, security flaws around agents too. So, um, safety concerns, just from what I've been seeing, is also around if you're using AI, no, like vibe code tools, just be careful of like security and scalability. And the other one, if you're using agents specifically, just look at how they are kept secure as well.
Yeah.
Just yeah,
And I think that's a whole new opportunity for innovation,
yes,
AI security, because all the security is about reviewing code and looking for, you know, nefarious code or, Trojan horses and things like this. Whereas,
yes,
then we need a new way of thinking about security.
yeah,
That's not something I know much about because it's such a specialized use case. That's a very much an engineering world because you're kind of lifting the hood and looking at what's underneath that you can't see.
that's right.
And
That's right.
as a no coder, um, yeah, I got a lot of respect for people who can kind of do all that.
So I don't think there's any more questions. We've hit the hour. Just want to check people can, you're happy for us to share your details of the people to connect with
Yeah, of
you
course. Yeah,
on
yeah. I've already
any of
had
these
some
things
people
that we've
reach out
discussed?
on LinkedIn and asking if
Yep.
there's going to be a recording of this. So I said I'm sure Matt will have a recording organized, and I'll send them the link after.
Yep. So feel free to connect with Carl. We'll post this out probably on Monday, the recorded version, and with his details as well. So if you want to get in contact with him, follow us. Actually, maybe I'll just share your profile on the chat anyway, just so they've got it. Um, that way people can connect kind of straight away. But yeah, we will definitely share it on the recording as well, just so you, in the description, so you can connect with him and ask him any questions as well. So thanks a lot for your time, Carl. Really appreciate all your insights. Definitely a lot there for people to learn, and I think you shared a lot of great, especially experience and insights from what you've done. So
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Always love having a chat with you. And it'd be interesting to kind of revisit these conversations in a couple of years and to see where it's gone through from what we've talked about.
Yep.
So I remember chatting to you a couple of years ago and it was all talking about no code. And AI wasn't even
Yes,
really on the horizon then.
that's right. That's right.
So it's amazing how
But
fast things can change.
yeah. And remember, guys, if you are looking for people, no code specialists, or even anything in AI, we're always happy to chat about that as well through our developers in Nepal through TechOn. Okay, thanks again for everyone for watching. Thanks for the question. And yeah, we'll post this episode out shortly. And we'll be posting our next episode shortly too, just as we organize our next speaker. Thanks again, Carl, and look forward to chatting soon. Cheers, guys.